Let me ask you a question. What does a Harbaugh-built roster actually look like? Not on paper, not in theory, but in reality, when the pads come on, the depth chart tightens up and the season starts to take shape? Because right now, with OTAs looming and training camp just around the corner, the Chargers depth chart is giving us a glimpse, just a glimpse, into the blueprint this coaching staff is building from. Some of it makes total sense. Other parts, not so much. And that's what today's all about. I'm going position by position, unpacking not just who's listed where, but why it matters, who's quietly rising, and which players might be hanging by a thread. What's up, Chargers fans? Welcome to the NFL Playbook Chargers. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. This channel is all about breaking down everything you need to know about the Bolts. All right, let me just say this right off the bat. This is not some final prediction. We all know how quickly things can shift once training camp kicks off. Players climb the depth chart, others fall off, and unfortunately, injuries are always part of the equation. But based on where things stand today, I want to give you my read on how this roster is coming together. From free agency to the draft, the team's overall direction is starting to take shape, and there are a bunch of interesting storylines to dig into. So let's dive in. First up, wide receivers. That's where a lot of the buzz has been lately. If I had to put a starting trio out there today, I'd go with Mike Williams at the X, Quentin Johnston at the Z, and Ladd McConkey in the slot. Two of those spots feel pretty locked into me, but that second outside role, that's where it gets interesting. Now, I know a lot of people aren't exactly thrilled to see Quentin Johnston penciled in as a starter, and after last season, that's fair. But when you step back and look at how these three fit together, Mike as the boundary guy stretching the field vertically, Ladd working underneath and over the middle, and Quentin running deep crossers and over routes across the formation, it actually makes a lot of sense. Their skill sets kind of balance each other out. That said, the name that keeps popping up, and for good reason, is Tre Harris. This guy's been generating a ton of buzz as a possible breakout player. Could he leapfrog Quentin Johnston? Could he even push Mike Williams if injuries hit again? Totally possible. I'd even say Tre Harris probably has the clearest path to a starting job of any backup on the roster right now. And that's not something I say lightly. If you've been following this team, you already know the deal with Mike Williams. As talented as he is, it's just hard to count on him playing a full season. That's just been the pattern. So yeah, I think Tre Harris is going to get on the field early and often, but let's be clear. He's not going to be asked to do everything out the gate. He'll have a specific role, especially early on. Expect to see him on deep shots, comebacks, vertical plays, that kind of stuff. And honestly, that's smart. Let him do what he does best and build from there. Now, behind those top four, you've got Keandre Lambert-Smith, Darius Davis, Brendan Rice, and Jalen Reagor all battling for the last couple of spots. Davis feels like a safe bet just because of what he brings on special teams, especially as a returner. But I wouldn't completely count out Keandre Lambert-Smith making a push for that job either. Then there's Brendan Rice and Jalen Reagor. To be honest, it's going to be tough for either of them to make the final 53, unless there are injuries or someone just completely lights it up in camp. The Chargers usually don't carry 7 receivers, and with how much they use tight ends and fullbacks, it's even harder to justify extra roster spots at wideout. Speaking of tight ends and fullbacks, let's talk about that group. Will Dissly is your main blocking tight end. We know what he brings, solid inline blocking, and he'll chip in with a catch here and there. Then there's Tyler Conklin, who's more of your move tight end. If this offense starts leaning more on the middle of the field, Conklin could actually have a sneaky good year. Now, fullback is where it gets interesting again. Right now, it looks like Scott Matlock has that job locked down. But keep an eye on Tucker Fisk. He played well in a limited role last year. And if rookie Oronde Gadsden II doesn't develop quickly enough as a blocker, Fisk could absolutely hang on to a spot. That's a competition worth watching. Let's shift to running backs now. Another spot where there are strong opinions. As of today, Najee Harris looks like the 1A. He's the vet. And if history's any indicator, the Chargers like to lean on that early in the season. But Omarion Hampton is right there as the 1B. And honestly, I don't think it's going to take long before he's the featured back. Behind them, you've got Hassan Haskins and Kimani Vidal. Haskins feels like the safe bet for RB3, mainly because of his special teams value and ability in pass protection. Now, a lot of folks have been asking about J.K. Dobbins. I'll just say this. Unless there's an injury, I don't see it happen. Bringing in Dobbins would probably push Hampton into a special teams role, and that's not what you drafted him. The Chargers showed their cards when they signed Najee and drafted Hampton. That ship has probably sailed. All right. Let's move over to the offensive line. This is where things start to heat up. Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt are your starting tackles. No debate there. Those two have legit potential to be the best tackle duo in the league. I'm genuinely excited to see how they play together. At guard, it's Daiyan Johnson and Mekhi Becton. Solid setup. Center is where the conversation starts. Bradley Bozeman is listed as the starter, and from what we've heard from the coaches, it doesn't sound like that's going to change anytime soon. I know a lot of Chargers fans aren't exactly thrilled about that, and trust me, I get it. We all want better play at center. But the reality is, Bozeman brings experience, leadership, and he's clearly got the trust of Jim Harbaugh and the staff. He's also making more than just about anyone on that line outside of the tackles, which tells you something. Andre James was brought in to compete, but if I'm being real, this feels like Bozeman's job to lose. The team didn't draft a center, and there aren't any major signs that they're trying to replace him. Could James surprise everyone and win the job? Sure, but if I had to bet on it, I'd say Bozeman starts week 1. For depth, you've got Trey Pipkins, Jamari Salyer, and Branson Taylor as the main backups. Andre James slots in as the backup center unless something shifts. Not a flashy group, but it's solid and dependable. All right, let's flip it to the defensive side. Starting up front on the D-line, it's Khalil Mack and Tuli Tuipulotu on the edges. No surprises there. Inside, you've got Otito Ogbonnia at nose tackle, with Justin Eboigbe and Jamari Caldwell in the rotation at defensive tackle. This team's clearly leaning into size and power up front. Eboigbe reportedly bulked up to about 310 pounds, which is a big deal. If he can bring some pass rush from the interior, that could really elevate this defense. At linebacker, Daiyan Henley is your headliner. He's coming off a breakout year, and if he takes another leap, he could be flirting with all-pro status. Denzel Perryman is back to bring that veteran presence. I expect him to start alongside Henley early on, but don't sleep on Junior Colson. The coaching staff loves this kid, and I wouldn't be shocked if he grabs that starting role at some point during the season. Troy Dye rounds out the group as a solid depth guy, and Nick Niemann makes the team as a core special teams contributor. Overall, this is probably the best the linebacker room has looked in a long time. Good mix of youth, experience, and versatility. Now to the secondary. Outside corners are likely Dante Jackson and Cam Hart, with Tarheeb still in the slot. If they're only rolling with 2 corners, I'd actually prefer Hart and Still, but Jackson's contract probably guarantees him a role. At safety, it's Derwin James and Elijah Molden. I know some folks are still holding out hope for Alohi Gilman, and I get it. He played well when he was healthy, but the team gave Molden the bigger contract, and that usually tells you where things are headed. For depth, you've got Dean Leonard, Triqueze Bridges, and RJ Mickens battling for special teams roles and rotational work. Josser Taylor feels like the odd man out right now, but if he has a strong camp, that could change. One thing I'll be watching closely, how they use the safeties. If Alohi Gilman can stay healthy, it gives them the flexibility to move Derwin James around and let him make more plays near the line of scrimmage. And that's when this defense really starts cooking. So, big picture, where does all that leave us? Honestly, I feel better about this roster than I did a year ago. The offense has more weapons, the line looks steadier, and if a few key guys on defense take the next step, this could be a very solid team.